Welcome back, fishing fam. I know we've all had those days where we're just begging for a bite. Sometimes from any kind of fish. We don't care, we just need to feel the tug. I've got a surefire bait that I guarantee will put a fish of some kind at the end of your line. More than likely a bass. I'll show you my bait, I'll show you the techniques I like to use and where I like to fish it the most. And here it is, the Texas rig. But not any Texas rig, a baby Texas rig. Now before you click off the video because I showed you the Texas rig, this one in particular is much different than your traditional Texas rig. Look, this guy is a fish catching monster. We have a light wire EWG hook. In fact, I'll show you the exact one I like to use. Gamakatsu 2/0 EWG hooks for this little 3-inch bait. Now this light wire extra sharp hook gives us two advantages when connecting with a fish. First, it's a light wire hook, which means it requires a lot less effort to penetrate the fish's mouth, especially since it's an extra sharp hook. Using a high quality hook is very important in this regard. Next, since we're using an extra sharp light wire hook, it allows us to downsize our line to use 8 or 10 pound test line. This makes us much more or less likely to spook the fish because they won't be able to see the line. I usually prefer fluorocarbon. I just feel like it is more invisible under the water than mono, and I know it has roughly a smaller diameter than mono at the same pound test, so that's why I choose it. So this small 3-inch bait may not seem like much, but the fish absolutely love this. I've had a buddy personally witnessed catch an 8-pound largemouth with this technique, and I've had days where I've caught hundreds of largemouth bass with these. I've caught all sorts of fish, crappie, perch, bluegill, white bass, you name it. They absolutely love this thing. Personally, I believe the 3-inch stick bait works best. You can experiment with colors. This one's more of a shad imitator. I have a black with blue flake. Or maybe you might want to try a little baby rage crawl or a baby kraken crawl. All these kind of fit in the same exact category as far as finesse Texas rigs go. I do have a quick question for y'all. If you're having a tough day out on the water, how do you get the fish to bite? What is your preferred technique? I know a lot of people are going to say the Ned rig, but I believe this, with my heart and soul, is 10 times better than the Ned rig because it is weedless. If you're enjoying this video, make sure you sub to the channel. I do content like this all the time. Make sure you leave the video a like, and now on to equipment. Now let's talk the equipment that I like to use. I always fish this on a spinning setup. I use braid to leader. The braid is for line twist and issues like that. And the leader is so I can change out the different sizes of leaders that I like to use. In this case, I'm probably going to use like an 8-pound leader, 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, and I can change the length based upon how finicky I feel the fish are that day. So the rod I like to use primarily is a medium power rod with a fast action tip. If I find that that rod is hook setting too quickly and I'm pulling the hook out of the fish's mouth before they fully get it, I will downsize my rod to still a medium power, but a moderate or moderate fast action tip. This has more bend in the rod and has more give, so I'm not yanking the hook out of the fish's mouth when I'm trying to set it. I fish the weightless version around shallow grass, and when I mean shallow grass, I'm talking like 7 foot or less. I'll throw it in shallow grass, throw it out there, let it sink to the bottom, give it a few pops. Sometimes it's a pop, sometimes it's more of a slow tug, depending on how finicky the fish are that day. But I let it fall to the bottom, either pop it or give it a slow tug, and that'll cause it to act like a small fluke. It'll rise up and then fall back down. And depending on how fast you want the rise up is, depending on how hard you pop it. Most of the time, in my experience, it is a much slower pace pull tug to get the bait to come up. Those fish are very finicky and really don't want to bite that day, so I give it a slower tug, and then let it fall back down. Then I do the whole process over and over again until it's out of the grass. Now that, I believe, is this technique's bread and butter. That's where I've caught hundreds of fish. Now, where you're gonna catch those larger, more finicky fish is gonna be on shallow laydowns. And I'm not talking Christmas trees, I'm talking like these big trees that have large branches where you're less likely to get wrapped up in. We're gonna have a little 1/8 ounce weight. I have one here, I have a whole tube of little 1/8 ounce weights. I like to use 1/8 ounce weights when I'm flipping into a little laydown like that, so it gets to the bottom. I want to fish the bottom because that's more likely in a laydown where a largemouth is gonna be. I'll flip it in the bottom, same technique, a couple little pops, it's gonna fall down fast, and then next time I lift it up, it's probably gonna have a fish on it. Now this technique is exactly how my buddy caught his 8-pound largie, so just note that. I think the bigger fish will tend to stay in laydowns like this. Since I mentioned the fluke a little earlier, if you want to know more about how to fish the fluke, I have an on the water instructional right here. Click on it if you want to check that out. But until next time, see you later, fishing fam.